Chapter 30. Victor watched all these events unfold until he and Ben Smith stood silently together again in the Eastern Shrine. "And now you've arrived," said Ben with a smile. "You can do what I couldn't. You are prepared for the sacrifice." "No, I'm not," protested Victor. "I don't know where you want me to go or how this is supposed to work." "Go to the Archdemon," said Ben. "And am I supposed to have my friends and I kill ourselves?" asked Victor in a frustrated voice. "What exactly do you mean by sacrifice?" "No, suicide is not sacrifice," said Ben. "Suicide was not a source of power for Molly. She wanted to escape, not to protect. Remember that a willingness to die to protect something precious is what truly generates power. Is that not the reason that each one of the key bearers in your era have come so far? Is it not your willingness to continue even after terrible tragedy and personal sacrifices that have made you successful?" Victor thought about how each one of his colleagues had demonstrated willingness to go into harm's path to protect others. Ben was right. The selflessness of each person had been the reason for their survival this entire time. Attune the 10th key to the prison of the Archdemon, and the power to truly defeat the ancient enemy of Earth will be granted, said Ben. The vision changed to show a softly glowing crystal structure sticking out of cracked ice in the frozen dark of Antarctica. Victor saw himself pressing his hands against the prison. "What is this?" asked Victor. "It will take about an hour to attune the prison," said Ben. "An undisturbed hour. Make sure the others understand that. They must be willing to provide you with the time." "Will they die?" asked Victor. "I don't think so," said Ben with a smile. Relief swept over Victor as Ben continued. "They are the council that has been prepared. I believe that they will endure. The 10th key should give you all of Michael's power once the attunement is complete, and it should give you power to preserve the change in time." The crystal began humming and shaking as they watched. There was a bright flash of light, and he found himself again in the shrine with Ben Smith. "What am I supposed to do to defeat the Archdemon once he's free?" asked Ben. "Work with your friends," suggested Ben. "They have all mastered great skills. Find a way to keep him from tearing the earth apart, and defend one another." Victor watched as his vision slowly faded. When Victor's eyes opened, he found himself on the ground surrounded by his friends. "Victor?" whispered Jennifer. Victor forced a smile in spite of the throbbing in his head. "What did you see?" asked Lucas eagerly. "Let him have a moment," said Jennifer in reprimand. "It's okay," said Victor as he sat up. He decided that he did not want to rehearse everything that he saw, as it would be confusing. He took a deep breath as he thought about the most concise way to say what he wanted. "The 10th key is supposed to be mine," said Victor, "and its purpose, along with the purpose of every other divine key, is to destroy the Archdemon in Antarctica. The key is supposed to attune to the crystal prison, and then we should have access to Michael's full power." There was silence for a few moments. Obviously, everyone was hoping for something more. "What about Molly?" asked Lucas. "She made a mistake about Ben Smith," said Victor. "She thought he was trying to deceive her, and so she killed him. It was too late when she realized she was wrong, and she suffered guilt to the point of insanity for the rest of her life." Lucas frowned, hoping for more, but before he could say anything, Sig's loud voice rang out. "So it's decided," exclaimed Sig with a smile. "We can put an end to all of this by defeating the Archdemon." "But this time we don't have a time limit," said Lizard. "I don't want to scout ahead of the rest of you this time." "The demon prophetess will know what we are doing," warned Samuel. "How sure are we that this will work out?" Everyone turned to Stephanie. Her face was flush and her eyes were wide. She turned to Samuel. After a moment, he turned to the others. "She said she saw Victor wrapped up in the crystal prison," said Samuel. "That must be the attunement that Victor mentioned," said Lucas. "Then there is something like a huge storm of power in the future," said Samuel. "She cannot see beyond it." Everyone but Sig, Victor, and Kirana grew a little uneasy. "We're going to be the ones to start it," said Victor in a low voice. "We're going to change everything when we defeat the archdemon." "Won't that pull us into the future again?" asked Lucas. "Not with the power of the 10th key," answered Victor. "That's the other thing. It should preserve our change in the timeline." Lucas scratched his chin as he thought about what Victor had said. Sig smiled and spoke up. "So it will be up to me to shield the Earth when he tries to destroy it," said Sig. "And up to the rest of us to support you as Kirana uses the heavenly sword to slice up the archdemon," said Jonathan. Kirana smiled softly. The plan was not complicated, but it seemed to be the best approach. After a few moments of silence, the ground shook. "What was that?" asked Sig. "Thousands of acolytes," said Roedy-2 as his eyes glowed. "They are trying to block our exit." "The demon prophetess knew we would be here," said Chloe in a worried voice. "And there's only one way out," said Lizard. "I warned you when we came down here." "Calm down," said Kirana with a smile. "This is where I come in." Her eyes glowed brightly and her key turned into a white-hot blade as she rushed toward the entrance. The sounds of approaching footsteps echoed through the hall. "Hang on," said Lucas. Kirana rolled her eyes and turned around with the others. "What?" asked Kirana. "Why are we rushing outside?" asked Lucas. "Aren't we trying to get to Antarctica?" "Yes," said Victor. "Yeah, well, it's not like we can get on a plane again in this time," said Lucas. "A plane?" asked Chloe. "Good point," said Sig with a wide smile. "What does he mean to get on a plane?" whispered Samuel to Stephanie. "So what's the plan?" asked Roedy-2. "Jennifer brings us forward 500 years, we leave, we get an airplane," said Lucas. "Brilliant," said Victor. "Why didn't you remember time travel instead of building that rocket to get us here?" asked Lizard. "Because we don't time travel," said Lucas. "Jennifer does." "A machine that flies in the air?" exclaimed Samuel in disbelief as he looked at Stephanie. "How is that possible?" Sig laughed loudly. "Wait, what?" asked Chloe. "An airplane," said Roedy-2. "It's a machine that flies in the air." Chloe's eyes widened with wonder. "All right," said Lucas. "Jennifer, can you bring us to the future?" Jennifer nodded as everyone gathered close to her. Her eyes began glowing brightly, and there was a flash of light. As the light faded, they found themselves in a room filled with stale air. Jennifer collapsed onto the dusty ground. "Kirana," said Lucas through coughs, "cut us out." Kirana nodded and, using her sword, cut her way through the rocky barrier that the demon acolytes had set up 5 centuries in the past. Fresh, cool air rushed into the room, providing relief to everyone. They quickly climbed out of the shrine to recover. Victor carried Jennifer, who was still unconscious. After breathing fresh air for a few moments, Lizard again helped to seal the passage behind them. Soon they had made their way out of the eastern shrine and into warm, soothing sunlight. "It doesn't look that different," observed Samuel. "This wasn't a heavily populated area in any time," explained Lucas, "but we should not be far from a road." "But we have no horses," said Chloe. "It's okay," said Sig with a smile. "No one else does either." Chloe gave a look of confusion. "Stephanie says that a large bus should arrive at the road west of here in a few hours," said Samuel. "Jonathan and I can probably persuade them to give us a ride." "Using air quotes like that makes you look ridiculous," said Lizard with air quotes. Samuel gave him a look of confusion. Sig laughed loudly. I don't understand, whispered Samuel to Stephanie. He uses air quotes all the time. There was a brief pause as Stephanie turned to Samuel. I still don't get it, whispered Samuel at last. Stephanie smiled and patted Samuel on the arm. The group made its way west and eventually found the paved road. What kind of road is this? Asked Chloe. It's asphalt, explained Sig. It makes riding a lot smoother. A car drove by, startling Chloe. What was that? She asked. A car, said Sig with a smile. Is that like one of those locomotives out east? Asked Chloe. Yeah, sort of, said Sig. The bus is coming, said Row 82. Leave it to us, said Jonathan with a smile. Jonathan and Samuel both zoned out as their eyes began glowing. Within a minute, the bus appeared around a bend in the road and slowed gradually until it stopped near them. Jonathan and Samuel snapped out of their trance as the bus driver opened the door. Do you need a ride? Asked the driver. Yes, said Lucas casually. The group filed on. There were several elderly passengers that gave looks of confusion, but when they saw Victor carry Jennifer, who was still unconscious, they decided that it was a medical emergency and seemed to settle in. Of course, seeing the machine implants in Row 82's throat and behind his ears made everyone a bit uneasy, but Sig's wide smile and the old-fashioned clothing that they wore prevented anyone from making any comments. Where is this bus headed? Whispered Kirana. Albuquerque, said Lucas. Where is that? Asked Kirana with a frown. The name obviously did not help orient her. A city with an airport, said Lucas. Kirana nodded, realizing that Lucas knew what he was doing. She turned to Jonathan. Are we going to have any problems on the bus? She whispered. Jonathan smiled and shook his head. Not with the driver or passengers, said Jonathan. Good, she said. The bus ride was less boring than it would have been had Chloe and Samuel not been present. Watching the trees seem to fly by on the road, feeling cool air come out of vents, feeling the vinyl seat covers, and listening to the humming of the bus engine was surreal to them. Though both of them tried to hide their amazement, it was evident that they were impressed by the technology. Even Kirana seemed to soften a bit as she watched Chloe and Samuel react to the nuances of a different time. Eventually, they made their way to the airport and got off of the bus. The roar of a jet engine and the sight of a plane taking off made Chloe stumble. Sig caught her and laughed loudly. Samuel stared in amazement with his mouth open. Stephanie took his hand as the aircraft flew out of sight. Okay, Samuel, Jonathan, said Lucas, we're going to need you to help us out. We need to get through security, and we'll need to secure a private jet. What needs to happen with security? Asked Samuel. Leave security to me, said Jonathan. Lucas can point out a pilot crew. We just want them to arrange for the plane to be ready, then Row 82 can handle the rest. Okay, said Samuel. He hoped that Jonathan had things under control. Soon enough, a crew of security officers approached them. Please let us escort you through security, said one of the officers warmly. Thank you, said Chloe sincerely. Surrounded by security officers, they walked out to the hangars where the private jets were being made ready. Now we'll leave you here to do what you need to do, said one of the security officers as they walked away. That's a flight crew, said Lucas as he pointed to a group of men tending to one of the jets. Samuel's eyes began glowing. We're almost done, said one of the crew. Please get on board. Is this really okay to be stealing someone's airplane? Asked Chloe as they climbed the stairs to the plane. Hey, who are you? Said one of the pilots as they got on board. Jonathan's eyes began glowing, and the surprise of the pilot seemed to disappear. Oh, of course, he said. I'll just wait for 3 days before checking airports in southern Chile for the missing plane. So you see, said Sig with a smile, we're just borrowing it. She seemed to be satisfied with the answer as the pilots and attendants left the plane. Lucas and Row 82 got ready to pilot the plane as the others got comfortable in the soft seats. So this thing is going to fly? Asked Samuel. Stephanie smiled and nodded as she helped him buckle his belt in the seat next to hers. Chloe seemed equally unsure as she buckled her seatbelt next to Sig. Kirana and Jonathan sat next to one another and quickly buckled in. Lizard was happy to have a reclining seat with plenty of leg room. Victor put Jennifer down in a seat next to his and buckled her in. She seemed so peaceful to him as the sun shined on her golden hair. He smiled and buckled in next to her. In only a few minutes, the thrust of the engine pressed him gently back in his seat. Slowly, the nose lifted and the plane's landing gear lost contact with the ground. As they continued to gain altitude, Victor looked down at the second key about his neck. It felt especially heavy, though he knew it was the same weight as the Heaven's Breath key next to it. He wondered how much of the events that he had seen were planned by Michael, and how much of it was just coincidence. He did not imagine that there had been much time to form a detailed plan as he had battled the Archdemon. Now that they were racing to Antarctica, there was little use second-guessing. Soon they would all find out what Ben had meant when he talked about the powers of Michael being granted, and whether using the abilities of someone who could not defeat the Archdemon before would really make a difference the second time around.